Welcome to our deep dives. Today we're looking at medieval theater. Our main source material is structured like a student's guide, which I think will be great for giving us that solid overview.
hmm
We'll be diving into mystery, miracle, and morality plays, really exploring how they took center stage back in the day.
You know, what always kind of strikes me is we think about the Middle Ages and we picture knights and castles, but theater, not exactly the first thing that pops into our minds.
It's so true. And what makes it even more interesting is that it all started in a pretty unlikely place, churches.
Yeah, imagine that the very beginnings of medieval theater inside the church. It almost feels like a paradox, doesn't it? These sacred spaces becoming like a breeding ground for drama.
So instead of thinking about massive sets and elaborate costumes, we should picture priests and parishioners acting out scenes from the Bible.
Well, maybe not full-blown productions, but something kind of like short dramatic interludes, woven into the religious services. I think it was a way to really bring these biblical stories to life, especially for a congregation that was largely illiterate at the time. It was visual, engaging.
That sort of living, breathing tapestry depicting stories from the Bible.
Exactly. And those early efforts really set the stage, pun intended, for the development of medieval theater as we know it.
Okay, so these performances started in churches, but obviously they didn't stay confined to those walls for long. What prompted that move beyond the church?
Well, think of it like a really good story spreading. The popularity of these religious plays just grew and grew. Eventually, they kind of spilled out into the community, finding stages in town squares and marketplaces, or really any open space that could accommodate an audience.
It makes sense. People crave entertainment, connection. And these plays offered both, along with some good religious instruction too. But what about these stages? Were they building elaborate structures, or was it more of a makeshift setup?
They were actually quite ingenious in their approach. Think movable stages, often built on wagons, allowing them to take their show on the road, so to speak.
So, not a static stage in a fixed location, but these traveling performances that could pop up in different locations. That's incredibly practical, especially given the limited resources of the time. But hold on, who were the actors bringing these stories to life? Were we talking seasoned professionals, or was it more of a community affair?
Believe it or not, all the actors were male amateurs. It was a true community effort. People from all walks of life coming together to share these stories. And the best part is that the performances were free and open to everyone, creating this amazing sense of a shared experience.
Wow, so a totally immersive communal event. Everyone gathering to witness these stories unfold, regardless of social standing or means. That really speaks to the power of theater to bring people together. But let's talk about the plays themselves. We've mentioned mystery plays, miracle plays, and morality plays. What made each of these types distinct?
Well, if we start with mystery plays, think of them as dramatizations of biblical events, bringing those familiar stories to life. Imagine scenes from the creation, Noah's Ark, or even moments from the life of Christ.
So, for those who couldn't read the Bible, these mystery plays were a really visual and dramatic way to engage with those stories. And what about miracle plays? How did they differ?
Miracle plays shifted focus to the lives of the saints, often highlighting the miraculous events. Lots of spectacle, emphasizing divine intervention, healing, really awe-inspiring deeds.
Ah, so mystery plays were like a window into the Bible, while miracle plays presented a more focused lens on the lives of these saints. But what about morality plays? They sound a bit more, well, preachy.
They were all about teaching moral lessons, guiding the audience toward righteous living by showcasing consequences of choices. They did this through allegory.
So instead of a character named John, we might see like greed or charity walking across the stage, right?
Yeah.
But beyond these allegorical figures, were morality plays just kind of dry lectures on morality, or was there something more to them?
One of the most famous examples is Everyman, a morality play that truly embodies the genre. The main character, every man, faces his final judgment, and, he realizes that only his good deeds offer any hope for salvation. Powerful, poignant exploration of mortality.
Sounds like a heavy dose of existential angst, even for a modern audience. Clearly, it resonated with medieval audiences, though. Do we know why? Was it purely about the religious instruction, or was there something more going on?
It's important to remember that medieval theater served both religious and social functions. A vital way to teach religious stories and moral values, yes. But it was also a much-needed break from daily life, a chance to come together and share an experience.
So entertainment and education intertwined. And for these largely illiterate audiences, a powerful way to experience and understand the world around them, both in a spiritual and a social sense. But I'm curious, beyond just teaching the masses about religion and morality, were there other ways that these plays reflected or even shaped the society they were born from?
You've hit on a really crucial point. These plays weren't just about escapism, they were really embedded in the social fabric of medieval life. It was a platform to grapple with those complex issues, from religious doctrine to societal norms, even political tensions.
So almost like holding a mirror up to
Yeah,
society,
all right.
using these stories to kind of reflect and maybe even critique the world around them.
Precisely. For instance, some plays would subtly question authority, the church, or the ruling class, using satire, humor, to poke at those sensitive topics. Imagine, say, a play where a bumbling king, or a greedy bishop is held up for ridicule. I bet that resonated with audiences who were familiar with those figures.
That's fascinating. So while on the surface they're presenting these religious moral tales, underneath there's this undercurrent of social commentary, even dissent.
Yes, and we can't forget about the impact on community building. Imagine entire towns coming together to participate in these productions, not just as actors, but as set builders, costume makers, even financiers. It fostered such a sense of ownership, pride.
Almost like a massive community project.
Yeah.
Everyone pitching in to create the shared experience.
Yeah.
Did that in turn lead to any sort of social cohesion or shared identity within these communities?
Absolutely, reinforcing shared values, beliefs,
Hmm.
creating a sense of belonging, solidarity. Easy to see how, in a world without mass media, these gatherings would have been so powerful in shaping public opinion and reinforcing those bonds.
Makes you wonder if we've lost something in our modern individualized world, where entertainment is often a solitary thing.
That's an interesting thought. I mean, we have access to a vast array of entertainment today, but that communal aspect is definitely diminished. Those medieval audiences, they experience these stories together, reacting in real time, sharing laughter, gasps, even tears.
There's real magic in that feeling of being swept up in a story alongside your whole community. Speaking of being swept up, I'm curious about the visuals. We talked about those movable stages, costumes, but were there special effects? Did they go all out with the spectacle?
Oh, absolutely. Masters of spectacle, within the limitations of their time, of course. They used vibrant colors, elaborate costumes, and props to create a really visually stunning experience. And, they weren't afraid to get creative with special effects.
So no Hollywood CGI. But I imagine they had a few tricks up their sleeves.
Indeed. Think fire-breathing dragons, angels descending from the heavens, even depictions of hell with smoke, flames, whatever means they had to create that sense of awe and wonder. But it wasn't just for show. Those visual elements served a real purpose.
I can see how those special effects would be impactful for a medieval audience, especially in those miracle plays, conveying the power of the divine. But beyond wowing the crowds, what else did those visual elements achieve?
Well, remember, most people couldn't read, so visual imagery was crucial for conveying the story. Those effects helped bring abstract concepts to life, making them more tangible, relatable. Imagine a morality play where the 7 deadly sins are represented by grotesque figures. That visual is much more pertinent than words. Right.
A visual shorthand for complex ideas, making them instantly accessible even to those who couldn't read. Amazing what they could achieve. We've talked about the use of allegory in morality plays, but I'm curious to dig a little deeper. You mentioned Everyman. Any other examples of how that worked in practice?
Sure. Take the play Mankind, for instance. The character of Mankind is literally tempted by figures representing vice and virtue, mercy and mischief trying to guide him, while Titavilus, a devilish character, leads him astray. The play shows the internal struggles we all face through these characters.
Like watching a battle between good and evil play out on a stage for everyone to see. So smart, making those struggles tangible and relatable.
Absolutely. And the clever part is, these plays weren't just passively observed, they encouraged audience participation.
Oh, so not just sitting quietly watching. Tell me more about that.
Picture actors directly addressing the audience, asking them questions, even inviting them to join in with the singing, chanting. Breaks down that fourth wall, blurs the lines, a truly immersive experience.
That's remarkable. The audience is transformed from passive observers to active participants, right in the heart of the story. Really highlights the communal aspect of medieval theater, doesn't it? Not just a performance, a shared experience. But with all that emphasis on religious instruction and moral guidance, was there any room for humor in these plays? Or was it all doom and gloom and fire and brimstone?
Well, even with those moral lessons, religious themes, medieval audiences, much like us, they appreciated a good laugh. And the playwrights knew it.
So alongside those morality plays, there were also comedic performances designed purely for entertainment.
Absolutely. In fact, humor was often even interwoven within the more serious plays, moments of levity, comic relief, and entire genres dedicated to comedy, like the farces, poking fun at everyday life, social conventions, authority figures.
Okay, picture this. You've just witnessed a powerful morality play, leaving you contemplating the weight of your sins, the nature of life. And then a troupe of actors comes in with their wagon stage, ready to present a hilarious farce about, say, a mischievous peasant outwitting a pompous lord.
Exactly. A world of contrasts. Profound spiritual messages coexisting with body humor and slapstick antics. It reminds us that even in the midst of religious devotion, medieval society had a healthy appetite for laughter, lighthearted entertainment.
That's refreshing. It really challenges that often grim image we have of the Middle Ages, revealing a society that embraced both the serious and the silly, the sacred and the profane. But with all this variety, were there any specific plays or playwrights that rose to prominence during this era? Names or titles that have stood the test of time and continue to be studied or even performed today?
There are a few that really stand out. When it comes to playwrights, the name anonymous pops up a lot. A lot of medieval plays were written anonymously, maybe authorship wasn't as important then, or those records just haven't survived.
Almost like these plays emerged from the collective consciousness of the community, a true expression of shared beliefs and experiences. But even without knowing the specific names behind every masterpiece, I'm sure there were some standout plays that really captured the imaginations of those medieval audiences.
Absolutely. One that comes to mind is The Second Shepherd's Play. It's a mystery play, but with a bit of a twist. It blends the biblical story of the Nativity with a comedic subplot involving a sheep thief. His name is Mac.
A sheep thief in a nativity play, how does that even work?
So picture this, right? Before those shepherds get the news about Christ's birth, they're dealing with this whole comical situation with Mac trying to hide a stolen sheep from them.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. It's a great example of how medieval plays could blend the sacred and the secular, the serious and the comedic, in kind of surprising ways.
It is, and beyond the entertainment value, I think there's a deeper meaning behind that blending of genres.
What do you mean?
Well, I think by putting those seemingly different elements together, those playwrights could explore a wider range of human experience, creating those more complex characters. They could also use that humor to make those religious themes more accessible to a bigger audience.
It's a good reminder that good storytelling, it's not about hitting people over the head with a message. It's about weaving together all the elements, humor, drama, spectacle, and creating something that really engages people, mind and heart.
Exactly. And speaking of spectacle, there's another play worth mentioning, The Castle of Perseverance. This morality play stands out not only for its content, but for how it was staged.
Okay, so what made the staging of the Castle of Perseverance so special?
Imagine this. A circular stage representing the world, surrounded by a moat, and in the center, there's a castle. It represents salvation. Throughout the play, those characters, they represent good and evil, right? They're battling for the soul of mankind who is trying to reach the castle.
Wow, massive production. Did they actually build a moat around the stage?
Maybe not a real moat, but they used whatever resources they had to create that illusion. This play shows how those medieval theater makers were always pushing the boundaries.
Incredible what they achieved with so little. It really speaks of their ingenuity and dedication. Makes you appreciate how much our own perception of medieval theater is shaped by, well, those limitations, doesn't it? We often imagine it as simple crude. But clearly, they were creating these complex, multi-layered, visually stunning productions.
We do. We have to remember that these plays were designed to engage all the senses, transport the audience to another world. And they did it using whatever means they had. But that resourcefulness wasn't just limited to, the physical aspects of production.
You're talking about the human element, the actors, the writers, the entire community coming together.
Exactly. Those were amateur actors, remember, often drawn from that community. They weren't trained professionals, but they really put their hearts into it. And that passion, that commitment, it showed through.
Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. When you have limited resources, you have to be resourceful, creative, collaborative. In a way, maybe those limitations enhance the final product.
I think so. It made them rely on their ingenuity, their community spirit, and their sheer passion for telling those stories. And those are the ingredients for really memorable theater.
Makes you wonder what those medieval theater makers would think if they could see a Broadway production today. All the sets, effects, professional actors?
I imagine they'd be amazed by the technology, but maybe a bit wistful for the simplicity and that community spirit that made up their productions. After all, while technology enhances the spectacle, it's the human connection, that shared experience, that's really at the heart of good theater.
And on that note, as we conclude our deep dive into medieval theater, it's clear that while the stages and costumes may have changed, the power of storytelling, that ability to transport it, make us laugh, cry, I think that transcends time.
And maybe that's the biggest takeaway. That reminder that even in a world so different from our own, the need for stories, for connection, for meaning that never goes away.
So the next time you're captivated by a play, a movie, or even just a good story, think about those medieval playwrights. With their wagons and their wit, their passion, their ingenuity, they laid the foundation for it all.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those stories alive.